Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome into another edition of Infection Podcast. My name is Nick Craig. You can follow me on X at Nicholas M. Craig. You can check out my website, nickcraig.com. You can't do this thing alone. Joining me each and every week, as always, Brian with an I, Aldridge. What's going on, buddy? Hope all's well.
Not too much. Of course, if you want to find me, you can get me at Brian Aldridge on all the other ones, or at Voice of Computer on X or Twitter or whatever we're going to call it.
No, stop. See, this is, so
is it
I've been
officially...
reading. Well, so this is, okay, so this is what's pissing me off, is like, you look at all these like mainstream media websites, and it's like, somebody put a post on X, formerly Twitter. We know what X is, right? Like, you can either call it Twitter.
Now my icon is changed to the name of X. It no longer says Twitter anywhere.
So it says twitter.com, which is fine. But my point is like, and I guess if you're not in the circle of this stuff, then maybe you don't know. But it's like, either call it Twitter or call it X. You don't need to say X, formerly known as Twitter. Just call it Twitter then. Like, it's like, it's weird. It's like, just pick the name.
It's a difficult name. Like, people don't know what tweets are anymore.
They're called X posts.
X posts, yeah. And the thing is, I think they're
just
still
call
going
it
to
a
have all
tweet.
that subtle. Yeah, I mean, it's still a tweet.
Just call it a tweet. Who cares?
And I know he's been throwing around other icons that maybe have a little resemblance to a bird. He's coming up with something that's an X, like the wings crossing. It looks like an X. Who knows? He's still figuring it out, but it doesn't matter. It's all the same service.
Well, and that's my point. Is like, just like when the news, like when it's written, I hate it when it's written. Like, you'll read an article and it was like, well, Jim Jordan posted on X, and then in parentheses, formerly known as Twitter. And it's like, well, then just say Twitter then. Like, just call Twitter. Like, everybody knows what that is anyway. So I don't know. Yeah. Little pet peeve. I got caught this morning not pre-reading an article well enough, and I read that on the air, and I felt like a jackass. So so now I'm hypersensitive, Brian. One might say I'm triggered by said term.
You're a millennial, so.
No, I'm not. I'm below that. What's the one?
Oh, you're right. You're
what's that? Y. I think I'm Y. Because it's X, Gen X, millennial, and then the one below that, or it's either Z or Y.
Yeah. So what generation? Okay, wait. Okay, so the generation Y. Yeah, those are millennials. No, you're generation Beta.
Oh God, I don't want to be.
Well, no, beta. Wait, no, that's born from 2025. Hold on, Generation Z is 1995 to 2009. Is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, your Generation Z, and then Generation Alpha is 2010 to 24, and then it's Generation Beta.
That's a super gay.
Everybody wants to be in Generation Beta.
Yeah. Nothing like being a beta male in Generation Beta. That's terrible. Well. All right. Let's see, Brian. We have not talked about these two behemoths of tech giants in quite some time. That's true. we have covered it pretty much from its beginning all the way till we are now. This is the battle between Tim Sweeney and Tim Apple, as the 45th president used to refer to him as, Tim Cook at Apple, over, and just a little background, a little history for folks that aren't familiar with it. Fortnite, very popular game, you've probably heard of it, was on the iPhone for quite some time. And the iPhone rules, the EULA for developers, is that if you're going to sell anything in-app, you have to use Apple's payment platform. And with that, they take 30%, no matter what the transaction is. If it's 99 cents, if it's $1,000, they take it right off the top. So Tim Sweeney said, I think this, I'm going to call your bluff. This is BS. So they just rolled Epic's, whatever this was before the Epic Game Launcher, so whatever their payment system was at the time, into Fortnite on iPhone, and Apple kicked them off the store. Epic sued them. They countersued. It's been a long legal battle since.
And they stayed off of the store for a while.
I don't think they're still on the store. I'll look right now. I don't think that they are.
I thought that they somehow got back on, but
so that's been the battle. Is can you? No, Fortnite is not on the iOS store. When you search Fortnite, the first response is Roblox, and then Call of Duty Mobile.
So they're still doing that manual install.
Yeah, they're still doing the manual install through Test Flight or whatever the app is called. So the battle is over exorbitant, which is, I would argue, payment processing. Unlike, So Steam has something similar. And Epic, is what, 8% or 12%? Steam is 30%. Now, to Steam's defense, they are also a CDN. They're hosting your content. They're doing the downloads. Right? You're getting some value for it. With Apple's 30% on payment processing, they are doing literally nothing. I mean, they are doing the transaction. They're doing the MasterCard or Visa transaction, and that's it. They were not providing any of the infrastructure for Fortnite. Now, yes, they were providing the App Store and whatnot, but they offer that to free apps too.
They were doing the initial download, but I think after that you're connecting to.
But that's free.
Epic anyways. After that, well, yeah. It generally is.
But it is. You can put a free app on there and Apple doesn't charge you for the CDN service. So the point is like, so they were charging 30% and providing essentially no service with it. And Tim Sweeney just said, screw it. We're not going to do it. So there's been this big elongated legal battle, and we've got an update this week, Brian.
Yeah. So there was a judicial order initially that was forcing Apple to change some of the App Store terms. And they just determined that those will not need to take effect immediately as litigation plays out. So Kagan said on Wednesday, that this is they're not gonna have to make any changes while the court session is still deciding, because it hasn't decided. That's not what this is. But right now they can continue enforcing the same rules. And you can't have any kind of a payment processor, because that's what they thought they were going to get, was kind of this temporary win of allowing some alternate credit card transactions inside of the iOS
or alternate app stores,
or allowing for alternate app stores and then taking other forms of payment. I really hope in the end that, because if they can get it to where they have to allow other things, it will create a little more freedom. Now, people they do make this choice when they buy an iOS, because iOS is not an open platform. You could argue that Android is an open platform, and so maybe some different rules can apply there because it's kind of open on an open source platform of the whole Android ecosystem, but iOS is not.
Can you bring your mic a little closer to you, Brian? So, that's true. Now, let me say this: as a Apple person, iPhones. I've always had iPhones. I don't have any Mac. I have a 2009 iMac that Amnon gave me. Other than that, I've always had iPhones. I had Android for a little while, but here's the thing: if I'm Apple, and this is what's going on, one of the big stinks with this was that Apple does not negotiate. You would assume somebody Epic is a behemoth. Like, they are a huge company. I know Apple's the most...
Bringing in a huge amount of money.
Huge amount of money. And there was a period of time where, and I believe this was in Tim Sweeney's Twitter threads at some point, X, formerly known as Twitter. This was in his posts at some point about how they were trying to negotiate, and Apple just wasn't budging. And to me, it seems like if I'm Apple, I'm doing a base 30% for everything. And then for the big boys, the people that are doing serious transactions,
up in dollar amount, right?
Yeah, but I'm talking serious dollar, like millions of dollars worth of transactions. Cut that fee down to 15. And I would guess, and at this point, no, because Tim Sweeney's not interested at this point. He will go to the grave with this. But at the time, if they would have said, you know what, Tim, you guys are doing X amount of millions of dollars a month worth of transactions through the iOS store, we'll do 15%. Something tells me he may have been like, oh, okay, all right, we can agree on that. But Apple's unwillingness to work with anybody on the fee is the problem. So they've screwed themselves. I don't necessarily want competing app stores. I don't particularly care. I just wish Apple would work with these companies and give the big boys, the big players in the games, the big people doing the transactions a break. That's how it works in every other business, Brian. I mean, you go to you have a Home Depot and you buy a 2x4. And what does it say? Buy 25 plus and they're, $1.50 cheaper or $5 cheaper, whatever the price is. You buy in bulk, you get a discount. That's just a standard thing. But some of these companies like Apple are just so, and Steam is the same way. They're so freaking stubborn that they're just not willing to work with these big companies because guess what? It's really lucrative to scrape 30% and do nothing. That's a huge generator of
revenue.
They're
almost forced, because most companies won't be willing, unlike Sweeney, they won't be willing to just step away from that platform. And that's where I think it may end up hurting Apple in the end if this continues to go to court and you get the right judge. They'll look at the fact that you are, in a way, strong-arming so many companies just because you have such a large market base, of the whole cell phone market, that people are forced to use your product. I mean, they're not really forced, but to survive, they're almost forced to use it. And I think that in the end, the fact that they're so unwilling to budge in any way could make it to where they get hurt even more, just like the old days with the telephone companies and all these ones that have been hit with the monopolies. Here in April was when there was the federal appeals court upheld the order saying that Apple was not allowed to interfere with developers putting alternate payment systems in. So that was there. And then this is putting that on hold to where it's pretty much exactly the same as before. So it's frustrating. I don't use an iOS, but for people that do, if you ever wonder, why things are more expensive ever on platforms, it could be because there's a 30% tax. I mean, if you're wanting to make money, you're got to automatically charge a certain amount because you're getting 30% taken off the top, aside from all the other fees you may be paying.
Well, here's a great example of it. X Premium, when you're the verified or whatever that's called, where you get the blue check mark, it's $89 a year, or $87 or $90 a year on PC, or if on a computer, and it's $110 or $120 on the iPhone, where you can subscribe to Twitter Blue.
Pass it.
Blue,
yeah.
that's what it's
called.
Yeah.
That's what they need to do, is pass it to the consumer, so that the consumer says, well, asks, why is this more expensive? And say, it's because iOS charges it.
It's harder to do. Twitter can get away with it, or could get away with it, because of it being a yearly subscription.
Yeah.
I don't know that that doesn't work with a microtransaction. I don't think that screws up the whole economy. I think.
But I'm saying, even if you just label it like, this is the Apple tax. Here's the normal cost. If you're on an iOS, here's your Apple tax, and just show what Apple is making on every transaction that they charge you. See if people kind of like, if people only knew how much gas costs without taxes, or cigarettes cost without taxes.
$1.20 state road tax.
But here's how much you would be paying, and then here's how much the government takes. And if people saw that, they'd be like, this is stupid. I can't believe we're paying this much to the government taxes. But since they put it in and don't label it, people don't realize or don't think about it. So
yeah.
I hope that changes and people become aware at these taxes, because this is something we've talked about with Steam. We've talked about with a lot of these different companies, that they just take a huge fee, and they've never changed it, even when technology has gotten cheaper. The CDN fees are cheaper. The server fees are cheaper than they were 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And again, I'm not opposed to a company like Apple charging a fee. They are providing a service. It is their ecosystem. You chose to use it. I am not, I didn't beat up on Steam all that much about it. I have a real problem when it's completely, it just seems unrealistic. And I think that's kind of where we are now.
I think with Steam is, I don't have to use Steam on my computer. My PC has the ability to install other platforms. The thing is Apple doesn't let you do that. A computer, I can install something else other than Steam. And if the person who's selling me the game decides that the only platform they want to host it on is Steam, that's their choice, but they're not being forced to. With Apple, you're being forced to use them, and you get no other option other than this manual install externally.
Well, and Brian, that is the cost of doing business. I mean, you can, I mean, that's what it is. You don't have to put your app on iOS. And I know that that's a great thing to say, but what's really behind it, but you don't. And there's plenty of apps that decide not to do that because they don't want to operate in that space. Again, I don't have a problem with iOS being a closed platform. I know what I'm getting when I buy the phone. I know that I'm getting the App Store. I know that side-loading apps is a pain in the ass. I know all of these things, and I'm okay with it because I really enjoy some of the features of iOS. I have an Apple Watch. I have my AirPods. The integration is really great. I like iMessage. I know what I'm getting as the consumer. I don't have a huge problem with it.
Yeah, well, and I think now people are more choosing. They view almost Apple and Android equally, where before there was the lowly Android and then there was the iPhone, which was the best. And I think now people aren't feeling like they're losing out by going to an Android, so it's kind of the less of that. Oh, I'm missing out, because there's a lot of people who prefer an Android now, but before they just couldn't afford an iPhone.
I've seen a marketing campaign on television. I think it's a Google campaign. I know you don't watch TV, but it's a series of things like, it's like this guy's got it. He's like feeding his kid or whatever that's in a high chair in the kitchen. And it's like, I'm going to lose my images when I switch to Android. And it's like the two phones plugged in with USB-C cables or whatever. And it's like one-click photo transfer. Google does that too. And then there's another one about text messaging and how you can do all these different emotes, and it's like Google does that too. So they're aggressively pushing on that. I will note though, there are still a couple of people. There is still there's a Rush song called "The Subdivisions," and it talks about people segmenting themselves. There is still, if you are an Android person and everybody else has an iPhone, there will be two different group chats. There will be a group chat with you and a group chat without you because of the iMessage group chat features. And that is something that Apple's never going to open. They never should open because that is their selling point. The second they lose that, it's a freaking free-for-all.
Well, one thing that Android's been doing to combat all that is they've really been improving their whole messenger service and sticking to industry standards and changing the standards to make them compete and be good when it came to messaging. But before, the problem is, and probably why iOS ended up doing this in the first place, is they were implementing things that just weren't on the standard SMS. Like SMS was old school technology. It didn't have anything nice.
170 characters or something. It was very late.
Yeah, and Android started implementing some custom things and communication in the back end, but then they got those changed into the whole industry standard, and now iOS is the one who's kind of outside and doing their own thing, and are not getting certain things that all the other ones, when they communicate together, can see. So I think they've got that, but if they can improve Android enough to where what's built in feels just as good as what iOS offers, iOS then maybe will come to the fold. But right now, I think they feel like they've got something better, but Android really is trying to push that. And I think that they are getting to a point where they're getting close to being equal with iPhones when it comes to messaging. And I think if they can get the group chats and the way that they send videos just to be better, which they're right on the verge of because they just started switching some of this stuff over, it might be that people then say, oh, you have an iPhone? Ooh, that's not good because you're not going to be able to do this. Where everyone before it was, oh, you have an Android? Ooh, you're not going to be able to do this. And I'm hoping they change it because it'd be nice if they implemented their service into the standard so everybody could communicate in the same way and not be losing out on features. Like when my wife sends me something from her iPhone, it will lower the resolutions of the photos for no reason when I can receive high definition photos. So stupid stuff like that.
Interesting.
All right. So do you care where we go after this? We've got a couple of interesting topics. Okay. I wanted to mention here really quick something I found out today. It was posted 2 days ago, but Disney, did you know that they're going to be ending their Disney Plus streaming service?
What?
Did you hear about that?
No, I knew they just raised the price like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, here, Disney ends Disney Plus streaming service. And so I don't know. Well,
they're changing the name.
Let me read into this. Yeah, so that they have dropped to 146.1 million subscribers from their goal of 154. And I'm reading to make sure I'm not misgetting this, but they lost a total of 4 million subscribers in Q2 of 2023. So maybe they're being hypothetical here.
Yeah, they're not going. They must be changing the name or something. It's not going away.
So wait, the announcement they're joining Paramount, Warner Brothers, Discovery, NBC, Netflix, who have all raised the prices. Okay, the announcement has put an end to much of the initial allure. Okay, good. I was reading this. I put it in the show notes right before. I was like, I can't believe they're ending it.
Yeah, it's got like 100. You noted like 150 million subscribers.
They're shedding subscribers like you would not believe.
Sure.
And I think a lot of it has to do with this whole go woke, go broke thing. That there's a lot of people in our house. We have access to Disney Plus, but we don't watch Disney in our house, just because of at least newer Disney. We don't watch that stuff because you never know what's going to be put into it. They push the super hardcore LGBTQ woke ideology, and that's been something that they've pushed heavy in the past, 4 years, 5 years at least. You can't watch anything on their service, and there's been interviews with people that make content for their service saying that they put as much LGBTQ stuff as they can in every single show that they put out. Like they guarantee that there's going to be something LGBTQ in every single product. And it's been happening over and over again.
So I'm not discounting that. I'm sure that's some number of it, some portion of it. But I think the larger discussion here and the larger issue is, as this notes, like Netflix, like Discovery, like Hulu, and like everything else, they are raising their prices, and they're
wiping out content. They're removing a lot of their content from the streaming platform. That stuff even that only came out in the last couple months, they're removing already, which I think is odd. I don't know if it's licensing content, fees.
Well, but if it's Disney, I mean, the whole lure of something like Disney Plus is that, with them owning Lucas and so many of these other studios, that they own all this crap. I mean, that's kind of the whole point. And that's what Netflix is doing now with, its exclusives and its Netflix produced stuff, is that you pay for it once and it's available forever without the exorbitant licensing fees, like shows like The Office and Friends and other things like that are constantly hopping services because it's $100 million a pop to get the licensing fees for these things. I think when you're looking at, they're jumping the plan. This is the plan. Disney Plus, in less than a year, Disney Plus will be increasing the monthly cost of its ad-free plan from $3 to $13. That's the jump that they're doing on that because of how much they're taking it on the teeth with their ad-free plan. Hulu, which Disney owns a major stake in, will also be increasing the monthly cost of its ad-free subscription from $3 to $17.99.
So here's something interesting. At the end of May, Disney removed over 100 original shows and films from its streaming service. Even like Crater. That's what
originals. That's stupid. Why would they remove originals?
There's that movie Crater that they just put out in the last year that's about some kids on the moon or whatever. They removed that, and it only been out for 3 months. And they removed it from their platform, which I thought was very odd. They said the first wave of removals in May accounted for around $1.5 billion. And in an SEC filing earlier this month, it revealed that it would be doing another smaller wave of cuts at the end of the financial quarter to remove another $400 million worth of content. And this is stuff that they own.
Well, so I wonder. all right, here. I wonder if they're moving it to license it somewhere else.
I don't know. I thought that was really
weird.
That's
the only logical explanation. I mean, the only reason, if you're Disney, the only reason you're removing your own content is if somebody else is going to pay you to put it somewhere else. I mean, that's the only logical explanation to me, right?
It could be that other people are willing to pay them. Yeah, like a Big Shot, Willow, Better Nathan Ever, the one and only Ivan, like these shows that they own, they're removing them from the service because maybe Netflix wants exclusive on some of that content. And they'll be like, we'll pay you this. And they're like, well, we're not really making anything off of it anyways. But I just thought Crater was the weirdest one because it was only on the platform for like 3 months or less, and they already pulled it. Now, it wasn't very good from what I heard, but still, like, you made it. Why not leave it on the platform even if it's not performing well? It makes you look like you have a lot of shows available on Disney Plus.
Well, I mean, look at Netflix. Half their catalog is garbage, but it's content. And one man's trash is another man's treasure, Brian. So, what I think is terrible, what you think is terrible, somebody else thinks it's the best television show ever made. Yeah, that's really odd.
Yeah.
But again, going back to this, you've got these massive problems right now where you have all of these streaming services. Spotify, just a couple weeks ago, announced they're upping their rates.
Yeah.
The middle class, lower middle class consumer that is the ones buying these subscription services cannot afford $4 to $6, $13 to $19 to $20 streaming services. It is not practical. Yeah. And on top of that, also be paying a $70 to $100 a month internet bill and probably also a cable bill on top of that too. I mean, you're talking about bleeding out potentially $400 a month in content. That's exorbitant.
But that's the thing is I think that they're viewing Disney Plus as just kind of a money pit for them right now because of the amount that they're losing, probably on infrastructure and like whatever they have to do for licensing fees. Because I mean, they do have to give a cut to somebody, I'm sure, to pay for the actors because if they make money off of the subscription service, they still have to give a cut to actors for the films, right? I don't think these are one and done.
Yeah, there's licensing.
Contracts.
Yeah, no, it's licensing.
Yeah.
Well, that's what
they're
that's
still paying
part of what
that.
the SAG the SAG walkout and some of that stuff going on. That is what it is over, is streaming royalties. There's unlike selling a physical copy like a DVD or movie where you're paying per copy or per 1,000 copies, you're paying per stream, which can be especially when you're dealing with children who watch. I don't know if any of your children do this, Brian. The same show
we'd let them,
over and over and over again on loop. How do we pay out these? How do we pay this stuff out when we've got this one guy?
This person watched the same show 30 times today.
Seriously, and that's happening
for this episode.
And that's what they're trying to figure out. So there's quite a battle going on there.
And you had said that about the strike. I wonder if that's why Angel Studios, who makes The Chosen, and there's some other things that new film in theaters, they're behind that. I wonder if that's why they didn't have the Sound of Freedom. They didn't have to participate in that strike, but I think they are financed by donations. People will go and donate towards those films. So probably since there's not those royalties or whatever they're doing, I bet you that has something to do with why they didn't have to participate in the whole strike and walkout. Because that none of their people had to. So but that's going to keep. I mean, everybody trying to come in and get their money. It's just going to make this harder and harder for independent streaming services like this to stay afloat. It's going to come down to having one in the end.
Well, and that's we're on a bell curve with this. And you had everybody subscribing to these services because, oh my God, look how expensive cable is, Brian. It's $100 a month.
Cable
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
And there's
ads.
And there's ads. So we're going to subscribe to this service. It's $8.99 a month. We're golden. Now it's $20 a month or $17 or $16 a month. And you're going to see this fall off the other side. It's the same problem cable had. Cable used to be relatively affordable, but as they added more channels, they have to pay.
Oh, you want to have this channel? You want to have Fox News? You want to have HBO?
So maybe folks don't know this, but the way that it works is like if I'm Spectrum and Brian's a customer, and Brian comes and says, I want television service, and I say, okay, I'm going to provide you a television service. It's $70 a month. All of the channels that Brian gets, I have to pay licensing to those companies. Yep. For example, ESPN charges something like, it used to be like almost $4 a subscriber to the cable company.
Yep.
So your bill's $70 a month. $4 of those dollars in your bill is going to ESPN every single month for their channels.
Regardless of whether you watch it or not.
Precisely. And what has happened over time? Those rates have gone up. It has caused the price of cable to freaking skyrocket, and everybody's dumping it. My parents just dumped a traditional cable, and they got a YouTube TV subscription. But that's going to have the same problem. As you add these channels, everybody's trying to get the most that they can, which is what I would expect them to do, and it's causing all of these prices to just skyrocket.
Yep.
It's a vicious cycle.
And one interesting thing is like Roku. There's been a lot of channels that are starting to join Roku.
Stream free on Roku. Yeah, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Watch free or whatever it's called.
Yeah, they got Watch
Plex
Free,
has got one.
and then Plex has a lot of free channels, and so it's getting kind of crazy. And who knows where it'll end up, because I think people never would have realized that, when you went to these streaming services, that it would have been ending up right where cable used to be. So who knows where these are going to go? But there's a lot of free content available now that wasn't available back in the day. Wasn't available even 5 years ago. And a lot of people are realizing, I don't really need cable to be able to be entertained all day. And they're starting to use the free channels, and it's kind of going back to over-the-air channel. There's ads every once in a while, and you're just watching content, and it's just digitally using your internet rather than over-the-air.
Yeah, it's called OTT.
And it's kind of funny how, they've come all the way back.
Yeah, over-the-top transmission is the term that all these IPTV channels use. It's fascinating.
Well, okay, so sorry to distract with that and get a little sidetracked.
Not at all.
Oh, here's another piece of news that really I was not expecting, and this is Rockstar, who turned around and purchased a group that before they were actually kind of working against.
Yeah,
they were shutting down some of their things. They sued them, but they have purchased some of the role-playing communities and are rolling them into their company. So first of all, remember 5M is
huge.
One of them.
Massive.
Yeah, this is what a lot of the streamers are a part of, and that software. They've purchased them. CFX.RE is the company, and that's the one behind 5M and Red M. Those are the two big ones that were out there, and they were doing a lot of modding to be able to get of servers, and allowing people to play and have special rule sets. So I'm assuming that this means that some of those role-playing features will just start being built in, so that people don't have to be hacking the software, I guess you would say, to be able to do these sort of things. I don't know why they didn't think of this earlier. At least provide tools. I know there are various forms of modding that you can do, but it gets kind of difficult when you get onto a server. But I'm surprised that they didn't try to do this earlier, and maybe this is a hint at what's going to be in GTA 6, is what I'm looking at this as, because all of this software is built on GTA 5 right now. Maybe with them bringing them in-house, they're going to build a whole platform that releases with GTA 6 and makes it so they don't have to try to reverse engineer and hack the system, and it'll make people less likely to be messing around with their software, which Rockstar seems to hate.
Yeah, they've definitely not been the embracers of the old mods over time. I mentioned this before the show. I don't know if it was before we were on the air or while we were on the air. Ark did this, and they were one of the games. We followed this very closely. They purchased a bunch of mods, like maybe upwards of a dozen or so. Primitive Plus, that was a mod that they purchased and brought into themselves. It's not unheard of for companies to do that. What is unheard of is a company like Take-Two Interactive, Rockstar, who, again, as you note, is like Nintendo, so anti like anybody touching their baby. Don't touch my game. Don't screw with the code or anything, that they would purchase it. I'll tell you why, Brian. Because GTA 5 is a decade-old game at this point, and these 5M servers are what are keeping their player base alive. It is what is keeping their active users alive, and that is a smart move, especially heading into GTA 6. They can bring these guys right in and day one have a really, really cool RP-based online multiplayer, which will be sick when it first rolls out. That's gonna be awesome.
And it'll be from the get-go, they'll have all these things to where people will quit holding on to GTA 5, because if they wouldn't have done something like this, everybody would still be holding on to GTA 5. You'd have streamers then, when they eventually got the tools out to work with GTA 6, that would then split the community in two. Here, 5M and Red M are going to instantly release all of these awesome tools that everybody's going to use. People will walk away from GTA 5 and they will go to GTA 6 because that's the official support by the whole platform, and it won't create that split. Here's their statement. Over the past few years, we've watched the excitement as Rockstar's creative community have found new ways to expand the possibilities of Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2, particularly through the creation of dedicated roleplay servers. As a way to further support those efforts, we recently expanded our policy on mods to officially include those made by the roleplay creative community. By partnering with the CFX.RE team, we will help them find new ways to support this incredible community and improve the service they provide to their developers and players. We look forward to sharing more in the weeks and months ahead. So
Boom.
It's not just going to be Red Dead, or not just going to be GTA, it's going to be Red Dead as well, which I think that would be an awesome role play with the whole Cowboys and Indians, Wild West, even in the city version of it with kind of that early 1900s type of a feel. People will be all about that when it comes to role play, but I think they need to build in the tools to make it to where it's not so janky, because that's part of the problem. And even like when people get arrested and thrown in the prison in the modern in GTA 5, like that whole thing is so janky. They're using existing assets and it just doesn't quite work right. Like create the whole system to where people can run the prisons. You have people in jails that go, it feels like an actual jail, and you have prisoners walking around with AI. Like that's where they can really make it work, is so that you can kind of interject yourself into a system that's running and makes you feel like you're really there. Like, and it'll be interesting to see how much GTA 6 is like that. Because Red Dead Redemption 2 did a really good job of that. Of you could just sit there and watch the world happen around you.
Sure.
And it didn't feel repetitive. GTA 5, on the other hand, you'd see the same thing and hear the same comments constantly, and it didn't feel dynamic in that way. And so I'm assuming GTA 6 is going to be more like Red Dead Redemption 2, but better. And so this would be perfect for this type of community.
Absolutely. So that's good stuff. We'll keep an eye as to what exactly that's going to mean going forward. Take-Two, the parent company of Rockstar, had their quarterly earnings last week, and the headlines are a bit concerning, but they actually make sense when you take a look at what's going on. Take-Two reports 98% increase in net loss in its fiscal year 25 guidance, hints at possible GTA 6 release window again. The Take-Two CEO was on CNBC last week, and David Faber asked him, like, hey, so when's GTA 6 coming out? And it was the greatest dodge of all time, as he just blew completely past the question. So according to its report, Take-Two reached $1.28 billion in net revenue in the quarter of fiscal year 2024, which is up 70% year over year. Digital sales, 97% of the company's total revenue. That was pretty staggering to me. That means, well, and let's be honest, nobody's buying new copies of GTA. Like if you're buying it for a system, you're probably buying a used disc if you're buying one. So that's pretty good. Mobile was a leading platform, accounting for 57% of net revenue, followed by consoles at 39% and PC at 8%, which I found very interesting as well. Now, mobile would be considered the Switch and things of that nature. Plus, again, Take-Two makes other games. They own other companies that make mobile games and things like that. So that net loss was $206 million in the quarter. That's up 98% from the period last year. According to the CEO, the core business trends remain healthy, and we are reiterating our prior guidance for their billion-dollar stock, $5.45 billion in net bookings for the whole fiscal year. So what is causing that? Well, I mean, you've got production of new games and everything like that, but I did find it interesting that in this financial quarter, they moved 4.5 million units of Grand Theft Auto.
Of the GTA 5?
No, GTA 5 was 185 million units.
Oh, of the original Grand Theft Auto?
Grand Theft Auto as a whole, the whole franchise was 405 million units. Yeah.
So that'd be
185
GTA
million
Online.
GTA 5. Everything, yeah. Red Dead Redemption, 79 million units, 55 million were RDR2. 2K, NBA 2K, 140 million units. Borderlands, 81. Civ, which I forgot they owned Civ. 67 in BioShock, 42 million units. It's crazy when you look at all that they've got. GTA, Red Dead, NBA, Borderlands, BioShock, Max Payne, LA Noire, XCOM, Mafia, Civ.
Mafia still puts out things once in a while. Kerbal's going to be putting out their new one here pretty soon. I know it got delayed, but they're supposed to be putting that one that we saw the video of at PAX. Like that's going to be coming out here pretty soon. Outer Worlds, I thought did pretty well, but
I played that for a little while. That was a cool little game. I enjoyed that. Yep. I didn't play enough of it, but I should have played more. But I enjoyed it.
I think Max Payne, I think has more releasability. You know, they've released a few games in the Max Payne series. What, 4, maybe 4 and some DLCs or something like that. But I think that one, the whole storyline, they could still be releasing things for it. Borderlands, they're still putting out content, kind of going to these micro games, but they seem to be doing pretty well where they're based on things in the main games, but like that Tiny Tina's and all that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're coming up with ways to make money, but the whole gaming economy overall, like we've been reporting week after week, is still struggling. It's still sales are down, hardware sales are down because of it. And I think until our economy really starts to rebound, here I think they're waiting on GTA 6 release, and then they'll have a huge influx of cash. So for them, regardless of these short-term losses, that's what they're holding out for, because they know they'll get a ton of sales and a huge amount of cash coming in at that point.
They will, and I should have pulled some audio from the interview. I just didn't think about it. But one of the things that was noted was that video games was a great COVID industry. Right, everybody was locked up in their homes. What are you going to do? You can't go out. The government 15 days turning into 15 years to slow the spread or whatever. So we're going to slow. What can you do? Well, you can watch movies or you can play video games. Right? Those are like the two main things that people were doing. So I mean, these companies saw insane amounts of revenue during COVID, and that is now dwindling down. And on top of that dwindling down, people getting back to living a normal life, you've got a pretty rough economic situation that a lot of people are in. So that doesn't help with it either.
So I mean, since we're talking about kind of the economy of video games, that had that deal that was going through with Embracer Group. They had a $2 billion deal that I think they were working on with Saudi Arabia, with a group out of Saudi Arabia. That fell apart. So that $2 billion deal fell through, and the studio that makes Dead Island 2, or that made Dead Island 2, is closing down because of it. So
wait, didn't that just come out?
Yeah, not too long ago.
Yeah, like within the last year, Dead Island 2, because it was. Wait, I don't know that it is out yet. It was announced back in like 2013, and then it was like radio silence for almost a decade. And then I thought it just popped back up like a year ago.
Yeah, and I'm going to read this through really quick. So the Swedish holding company that's been buying up everything from Borderlands maker Gearbox Entertainment to the rights to The Lord of the Rings saw its stock plummet earlier this year when a mystery $2 billion deal collapsed at the last minute. Axios now reports that the partner who walked away wasn't Microsoft or Sony. It was Savvy Games Group, backed by the controversial Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund led by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So late last night, we were informed that one major strategic partner that has been negotiating for 7 months will not materialize. Embracer CEO Lars told investors in a May 24th quarterly earnings press release. He added that if the deal had ended up going through, it would have set a new benchmark for the gaming industry. So not what they were expecting, but when you're dealing with governments like that, and I guess princes, you're bound to, if they just decide they don't want to do it, they won't do it. So too bad for them, but they think they were relying on a little bit too much. Embracer had received a $1 billion investment from that investment fund last year, so they have received a big amount of money. So that is kind of crazy. I didn't see that coming, and I was kind of surprised that I thought it had already gone through. I mean, I remember reading about it within the last month or two that it was happening, but the whole thing fell apart and ended up destroying a company in the end.
And there's another one too. A company called Acid Wizard Studio announces an indefinite hiatus.
They're the ones behind Darkwood. You remember that game, Darkwood?
Yeah, I think we talked about that.
guy. Yeah.
They cited a, quote, destructive work environment as the reason. I don't know what the hell that means.
Yeah, what's that supposed to mean? Well, and this is what's odd. And I think a lot of this is kind of this new type of thinking, because they're saying they hadn't been able to create a work environment that would not be destructive to the team's personal lives.
You know what, Brian?
So I think this is them on that whole push of, we shouldn't have to work any overtime. We should have a 3 or 4 day work week. And maybe they found that was impossible to do and make video games.
So it's that, okay. It is not impossible to do that and make video games. It is impossible to do that and make video games if you're an indie studio, right? An indie studio is like a small business. People that own actual small businesses work 7 days a week. That is part of owning a small business. It is not for the faint of heart. It is not for the people that want, I'm my own boss. I get unlimited PTO. Well, yeah, that's great. You do get unlimited PTO, but you can't take any of it because it's a small business, and if you're not working, it ain't getting done, right? So that whole concept is pretty odd, and it makes sense. Well, this is a huge problem because an indie studio is a small business, and if our families are our top priority, they
work hard.
They should not be negatively affected by our work. That I respect that. That's a fine opinion to have. But you're a small business. You have to crunch. That's all that you have, right? You're not Rockstar. You can't just throw money at the problem and hire more people. That's not an option.
Yep. And if you're going to put out a game and have it be successful with that limited amount of budget, you're going to have to put in the max amount of time that's necessary to get it done. And then, as you said, that's the way these size of studios work. And obviously, they're not willing to put in the work that's necessary to continue putting out these games, because they're saying they're working with amazing people who could make a sequel to Darkwood and continue working on Soccer Kids, which is a game that they've been working on. So they're interested in working with people to make those IPs continue, because they're not going to be doing them. They said that it has mentally and physically drained them.
I'm sure it has. I mean, they've been working on the game since 2017, but look at this. So you got very positive, Brian. 14,000 reviews, 94% are positive. I mean, that's phenomenal. But
they put a lot of these on the Humble Bundles and things, so maybe they're realizing that they have to continue putting out games to continue making money.
I think this is their only game. Yeah, it's their only game.
Okay, so they've been working on their second one, and they found that, I think they probably felt like they'd continue making a big amount of money on the first game. It'd give them time to work on the second one, and they're realizing we have to be putting out a game like every year to continue making money.
It's a brutal industry. It's a brutal industry. It's anything indie is brutal. Indie music, indie movies, indie TV shows, indie games. It is a ruthless industry. It's not for the faint of heart. And honestly, Brian, 2017, one game kind of makes sense. I mean, you've dumped 6 years into this, 6 years into it at this point. Yeah, I could see that. I could totally see that.
And I think that they figured they'd be the managers of making the games and other people making them under them. But with a small studio first game, you're not going to be bringing in enough money to do that structure. You had to build up to that. And I bet you they probably saw other studios doing things differently and saying, well, why can't we do that? Well, you can't do that because you've put out one game. You haven't put out 20 games that are continuing to make income.
Let's talk about since we're talking about interesting titles, let's talk about, Brian, one of our favorite games of all time, Chronicles of Elyria. This is a classic. We met these guy at PAX East in 2017, and he told us that it is his game, Chronicles of Elyria, was going to be the largest video game pretty much ever made. His name is Jeremy Walsh. He has found himself in significant legal challenges since then, as mass amounts of players sued him over all of these issues with timelines not being met. It's been a real disaster. So Jeremy Walsh, who originally is the man behind this, has announced that its soulbound engine, so they're building their own engine too. Not only is the game the largest thing ever, they're building their own engine behind it, is a, quote, functional MMO engine once again. So apparently they're taking their soulbound engine, and I guess the goal is to try and find some companies, find some studios that will want to build on top of it. I really don't understand why the hell you would use this versus anything else. I can't wrap my head around.
Well, okay, so here's part of a reason why. I'll give you his reason why he would tell you. Exactly what you're showing on the screen. He's putting a ton of objects in the world, and it's able to, in real time, show those moving around and each having their own interactions, right? He's creating an engine that's incredibly efficient with very simple objects, of course, to have 100,000 entities that are moving around and doing things. Okay, great. That's what you need. But the problem is right now, and what's going to hurt him, this is what Epic is doing as well in Unreal Engine, and because of the Witcher series. So sure, your little engine will be able to do it for games that look very rudimentary and have the same graphics as what we ended up seeing Chronicles of Elyria have. But Epic is going to be doing the same thing with Unreal Engine, and you're going to be able to have the super ultra realistic graphics. And if you want to put really basic graphics in that engine, it'll render those really easy. Where this is the best you're going to get out of his engine. Maybe 5 years ago or more, this would have been something that you could have sold to the public, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's great! I can have an engine that I can host 1,000 people on, and I can have all these things happening in real time."
Could have sold.
I just think his timing stinks. Yeah, I mean, Atlas tried that. And be interesting to see with the new changes of Unreal Engine, how much they continue to improve Atlas to where maybe it's just one big map. Because that's really the goal, what I would expect Atlas to want, is to have one big map. But that's what they're kind of promising here, is not segmenting everything into little boxes and only rendering what's in that one box. Or maybe, partially rendering things within certain ranges of those boxes. He wants to have it to where there's a giant map with 100,000 things that a person, if they were flying above, like you saw in that image, could see moving at the same time, because that's hard to do, especially when there's a lot of communication happening.
So the somebody by the name of Tom or Tomika3 on YouTube, one comment on this video: the FPS doesn't mean anything because in a game, all entities would need occasional stream. Apart from location vector, various changing parameters like armor and weapons would need to be rendered on an entity, triggering effects, etc. Not to mention all the AI logic, which is done server side. So yeah, of course you can have 60 FPS on 100,000 moving dots, but not that many entities with all the game logic behind them. Now, that's true, and so that's accurate. The bigger issue here is that this Walsh guy says that now that the engine is done, he can now get back to game development. But he noted he's going to be making a couple of family visits. August is a shorter month, but he's going to be back on it. The back-end tech is done, so now he can start working on actual game mechanics, Brian.
Which is just insane to me. The fact that he's still trying to do this engine it's been
almost 7 years since we saw this guy, by the way.
I don't know what his goal really is in the end, because he doesn't really have any gameplay. He doesn't have really much of a team anymore because he doesn't have money. It's like I respect that he's not wanting to give up, but quit being so stubborn, because I've run into developers like this to where they're so anti going with the mainstream that they've got to build everything by hand and they've got to do everything, and they're not going to use a visual editor. They're going to do they're going to do everything from command line inside of Vim. Well, great. You're gonna program everything in Vim and use no modern tools, but you know what? You're always going to put out subpar content, because today you need a lot of tools because everything is so complicated. Why not just suck up your pride and start making your game on another engine that you're not maintaining, so that you have time to actually make your game? He's getting so sidetracked doing this, and look at the cool things we're doing over here. Then he'll move over here and look at all the cool things I'm doing over here. But he never quite has a game. He never quite has a full product, and it's going to continue doing that because as he goes over here and works on this, that's going to get behind. And by the time he ever gets anything that's close to release, he's going to be 10, 15 years or more out of date because he already is way out of date in all the technology he's using. Remember that guy? There was that guy who made that little game where the people aged, and he interviewed him, and he made it all by hand, and he made it from scratch. Yeah. He wrote his own engine. He did all of these own things. Now that guy, sure, he could go to PAX and he could brag saying, you know what, I made my own game engine. I have all these people playing it. I did all these things. I did it the hard way.
1 hour, 1 life.
1 hour, 1 life. So yeah, he made a game where you have 1 hour, 1 life, and you would have generations that would continue. I think every hour you'd have another generation, and so you continue from your kid that you raised. Well, great. Have you heard anything about that game since? The guy got to brag. He got to walk in front of programmers. I mean, it was cool, right? But because he was so anti using anything that's, mainstream,
you mean
no one knows about his game except for us. Yeah, this guy. He was so proud that he wrote it in HTML with no tools, from hand, from scratch. But you know what? And there you go. I mean, this is the guy that you're dealing with. This is the same mentality as Chronicles of Elyria. You're never going to have something that looks like something that people are going to want to, like a product that people are going to want to buy, because you just don't want to conform to anything. Sure, it's cool, but you're never going to be successful. Like, would you rather be successful or you just want to be the hipster? I mean, it's like a video game development hipster is what this guy was.
Yeah.
And there's people who play it, sure, but you're not going to be super successful and be able to do a lot more than that. And this guy's done even worse. I mean, Chronicles of Elyria,
this guy's
at least
got
that guy put out a game.
Yeah, and it was actually pretty fun.
He put out a game.
Yeah, it was cool.
But Chronicle of Elyria, he wants to just make something. He's got some crazy concept in his head, and he's so unwilling to back down that he's taken his whole studio with him. All these other people have lost their jobs working for him because of his stubbornness. And I feel like it's a lot like Miscreated. Remember that guy that hates me from Miscreated?
Yeah.
Because I called him out? It's like that guy, because he was so hardcore dead set on doing everything the way he wanted to do it. And if you question him, he'd get pissed at you. Yeah, I called you out on things that were holding your game back from being successful. And you know what? A bunch of your developers are now on other games and moved on from your studio because you haven't been willing to accommodate and make something that will appeal to the masses at all. Ta-da!
Back to Chronicles of Elyria. Here's a new update. I'm going through their blog. A blog post out like a week and a half ago. Jeremy Walsh highlights how the game studio spent $7 million between 2017 and 2019. He had 17 employees at one point, which is insane to me. How he had 17 employees. I just want to read.
Doing what, right?
Exactly. I just want to read through a little bit of this. Walsh first explains why he chose 2017 through 2019, which basically boils down to the studio was still forming in 2015 and 2016, and in 2020 through 2023, the studios operated with a skeleton crew ranging from 5 individuals to just me, and paying legal fees. The breakdown then shows off a total spend and average spend for 3 selected years, breaking each one down by various categories like advertising, salary pay, convention costs, and more.
Yeah.
So he complains that the IRS took too much money because crowdfunding a game is expensive to do. But look at these charts, Brian. I mean, some of these dollar amounts are insane. Employee salaries and employment taxes completely understand that. They spent $35,000 in advertising for what? I mean,
Yeah. Well, where did I see any ads?
$117,000 in hosting fees for what? They didn't have a game.
Well, they didn't have a game up.
Yeah. $300,000 on an office. That's a problem. Software licensing, that makes sense. So a lot of this other stuff makes sense.
Even like health insurance premiums, almost $500,000 in health insurance premiums.
Well, that makes sense. You don't have a choice.
But when you're a studio just starting out, like you don't offer health insurance to your employees. If it's going to bleed, especially when you're crowdfunded, you can't be treating it like you're a major company. You're a crowdfunded studio that's using those donations, and people putting in those money ahead of time to try to be able to scrape out an actual studio. But the problem is he got a bunch of money in the beginning and he just went full studio before he was ready.
I do find this one line interesting. Owner distribution. I don't know that. I assume that's him since he's the owner. That was an average of $77,000 a year. So was that his salary? And then
so maybe that was his salary.
The 1.1 million was salaries. The other people.
Possibly.
Which
isn't crazy. I mean, if he was only paying himself $77,000 a year, that's not crazy.
Well, it is crazy when you don't have any money. That's an insane salary you're making.
When you're losing money.
Yeah, I mean, $77,000.
Marketing and SMM software was almost $37,000.
Yeah, they were spending $12,000 a year on marketing software. $11,000 a year on advertising. So 20.
Oh, that's total. So that's 3 years on the left. Sorry, I was looking at the left.
Yeah. So, but I mean, so this is the
$12,000 a year. That's crazy.
Well, no, but it's add another 11 to it. It's $23,000.
So that's social media management and marketing. So their social media management and marketing software was over $12,000 a year for the software. That is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at these lists of things. Some of the lower things, furniture, they paid $181
that's
for
all
furniture.
normal. Yeah, that's not crazy.
But when you get to the top, their software licensing fees weren't helping them. Their health insurance fees weren't helping them.
No, but the software licensing fees make sense. I mean, if you're building a video game and you have to pay for some of these softwares. It's just not an option. But I
pay for my health insurance. Why are they? Of course, it's subsidized through my company.
Yeah, they have to.
But why were they paying for their premiums?
Well, they probably weren't paying their premiums. That's probably just how it's listed. I mean, if you offer company health insurance, you're kicking in some on it. But I bring this up not to point fun at Jeremy Walsh, but I think this, and I'll give him credit for this, good on him for putting this information out, because this really does break down, again, their top three things was salary, taxes, and health insurance. Two of those things do not help get a game built at all. And those are your top three expenses. It's really expensive to build a video game, Brian. It's really expensive to operate a business. It's really expensive to have employees.
Yeah.
Really, really expensive.
Yeah, okay, that is crazy. And I think, he's been fairly open. And I think a lot of what it comes down to is mismanagement. And by that, I mean him not scaling it to what they really were. Because it's just like how he described his game to us. We are going to provide you with everything. It's going to have the most features of any game you've ever seen. It's going to do everything that you could ever want it to do. Just write it down on a piece of paper and burn it, and the game will then have it. Like, that's how he treated it. And rather than being realistic, where you need to have a manager who's realistic, who says, you know what, sometimes we have to tighten our belt. Sometimes times are good, but let's tighten our belt when it needs to be tightened. And then this guy felt like he didn't tighten his belt till he lost everything.
Yeah,
then it's just him.
It was setting a ridiculously high expectation, having no practical way of achieving it, and then pissing away all the money, which is essentially what happened. $7 million in crowdfunding is insane. This guy made a fortune crowdfunding this game, and the people took him to task on it, and rightfully so. They should have.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. That is frustrating.
Let's get out of here.
All right. Well, hey, if you want to find me, you can get me at Brian Aldridge on all the various social media platforms, except for X. We can get me at Voice and Computer. If you want to go check out my blog, biteoftech.com, or if you go to our website, infectionpodcast.com, that's a really good way to get a hold of Nick or I. And if you go to our Discord server at the upper right-hand side, we've got a place where if you want to put news links in there, we have a show news channel, and we'll review that before the live show. So perhaps there's some input you want to give to what we discuss. That's the perfect place to do it. If you want to participate in one of our 11 ARC servers, you're more than welcome to do that. Or just come and hang out and talk politics. You'll be able to choose a role. If you want to play ARC without having to deal with politics, you can do that. Or if you want to talk politics without having to deal with the other games, you're very easy to do with Discord. If you want to watch the live show, you can do that through Twitch or YouTube. And, of course, after the fact, we have our Rumble upload. And if you are going to be listening or watching after the fact, you can go check out the audio versions at the lower right-hand side. And then check out our show notes for the particular episode. We've got links for the video and audio player right on the page. And then everything that you can reference throughout the show. So anything that we talk about, we put a link for that discussion. That way you can continue and dig deeper into what we were referring to. And maybe there's a video or images that you didn't get to see because you were listening. That's right there all on that page. If you want to support us, there's a support option up top, or you can go to infectionpodcast.com/support.
Yes, sirree. Brian, as always, greatly appreciated, my friend. Thank you very much, and we will see you next week.
See you later.
Alrighty, folks, that's going to do it. You can check out my antics by visiting nickcraig.com. You can follow me on X at Nicholas M. Craig, or as Brian noted, you miss any portion of the show, you can check out our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We will see you next time.